see to work, get more done, unlock more time, more money, and more freedom.
Join us as we explore the challenges and power of making work visible. Welcome to the Visible Workplace Podcast with Dr. Tom Rolley.
Now, let's get into today's episode. Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Dr. Tom Rolley, and great to have you here. We're going to be looking at a particular challenge that comes up around systems and procedures, and that is mixing up the usage of them. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean, when you are doing some types of work, executing some kinds of systems, these will be a one-off or a setup for some work. And sometimes you'll have other work and other systems that are more ongoing. And if you mix these together, then you will have problems. And the reason that this happens is because there's no higher level thinking. People aren't thinking in systems. They're just thinking about, well, what has to get done in order to get these results. Now, that in itself is a good thing. As we've covered many times before, there is a direct link between the work that's getting done and the results that are getting produced. And we generally want those results. Whether we're producing in our business or in our life, I'm like, hey, I want those results. How do I get them? And if I know what to do and I do that work, then I will get those results. But if I'm not thinking as clearly as perhaps I could be, I might say, right, I need all of these results and here are the steps to do them. But then an error happens or a mistake or a problem happens. And that is that these get mixed up. And what is involved in perhaps setup work gets put into the same system as the ongoing work. For instance, let's say that I'm setting up a coaching group and there's a bunch of work around setup. And that also gets mixed into the weekly calls. Let's say it's a 12-week program. And suddenly it's like, hang on, why am I seeing work that's already been done? We set that up already, and yet it's appearing in the system because these are not well separated. This is a problem of thinking. This is a problem of being able to see what the results are. Is it a one-off setup or is it an ongoing thing? And getting this right means that your work will happen much more smoothly. One solution I've seen is, well, let's just not ever do any homework. And that avoids mixing up systems. You're like, you know what? We're just going to have the call. It's pretty easy to set up the call. I'm not even going to track it, and I'm not going to have any homework. And you can get by like that. But as things get more complicated and you get more people in your business, then this becomes a less helpful strategy. There's just too many moving pieces. People can't see what's going on. Yet, we do need to have procedures. If we think about the work and it's like, hey, I want this to happen consistently, then we want it written down. Why? Because it makes it much more likely that I'll do the right steps in the right order and I won't miss things out. And hopefully it's, well, not even you having to do the work, it's your team, but we get consistent outcomes when those when those instructions are followed. And it's like, do this, do this, do this, and we will get this. So we want this to happen. And the question is, well, how do all these procedures fit together? What order do they get done in? What's the outcome that they produce? And when do they get done? These types of questions will define how you put together the systems in your business. You see, well, what happens if I don't think about the results and I just mix them all up? Then I'm going to end up with one giant system with a whole bunch of results and a whole bunch of procedures, and it won't be very useful. And people are like, this sucks. This is no good. Now, it's not that the procedures are wrong or the results are wrong. They could well be correct, but the fact that it's not separated correctly, that it's not designed as a system that takes into account what's the purpose of this, once off or repeating. When should this be done? Once off or repeating. Who's doing it? Well, how do we track that? All of those things need to come together in a system. So I was watching this. I got to see this firsthand, and I was part of a business that was handing out SOPs. And it's like, here, do this. But what had happened was that they had mixed up the setup stuff and mixed it through with the delivery. And this made it very difficult to use. This was also just in a Google Doc, so you didn't actually have any tracking or any ability to say, yep, I'm up to this step. But negating that problem, the actual issue was that all of these steps were mixed up together. And it was like, oh, what is going on here? The real problem is that if you do not have the ability to think in systems already as a skill set, then it might be assumed that you could just go ahead and execute these steps and do for step 1, do step 2, do step 3. But if some of those steps, let's say 1 and 2 were for setup and step 3 is for ongoing, then it becomes very difficult to say, okay, well, hang on, that's already done. Steps 1 and 2 are done. Why are they here? Oh, I'm confused. And now we get the problem of people not doing the work, using the instructions. They'll do the work, sure, but they'll just do the best they can because there was a structural problem in the way that the SOPs were set up. And so getting this sorted actually takes a skill set of being able to say, well, when does this system get used? Oh, this is a setup one. What are the results that need to happen at the end of the setup? Oh, right. Well, we need to send these emails to these people. We need these Zoom calls set up. We need this done and this done. And here are the SOPs that generate that. And once that's done, it's done and dusted and we can move it away. And then over here on the other side, we've got the recurring work. Every week, there's some work that happens before the call. The emails get sent. Then there's the call itself. And then perhaps that call goes up on the training portal and that recording gets edited and put on. And then there's a reminder email and that happens each week. Now, if we mix these two up and we take the setup into the recurring, it becomes a giant mess and people don't use the instructions. They don't use the systems. They're like, this is confusing. But the real problem here is the inability to be able to separate out what should go where. And this is systems level thinking. So what I want you to do is have a look at perhaps where your systems and your SOPs are mixed up. Does this work happen once off? Then great, it's a setup one. Does it happen on a recurring basis? Great, it's a scheduled system. Or does it happen when something else happens? Then it's a triggered system. And they're really the only 3 ways that you can start a system. Once off, scheduled recurring, and when something else happens, triggered. So getting those 3 things separated out suddenly will allow your systems to make sense to your team. And they're like, oh, wow, look, we're doing some setup work here. I'll do step 1 and step 2, and out of that will be the setup. And then each week, there might be a Google Calendar recurring reminder for 12 weeks if it's a 12-week program. And it sets up and says, hey, here's the system that has to be executed each week. And each week that system gets done, it's the same system over and over, but each week the work gets completed. The emails get sent, the recording gets made, the recording gets uploaded, the replays get sent. Happy days. And so this is a crucial skill set. Your ability to recognize what is the purpose of the system and keeping your procedures and your results for that very clean. All right, that's all I got for you tonight. Today, if you want some more help around this, we have software, we have consulting, and we have coaching. Head over to www.magicboards.io. Hope you got a lot of value out of today's episode. If you want to give us a review, head over to the Spotify or YouTube and type in your thoughts around this podcast. Thanks for joining me today. Look forward to seeing you on next week's episode.
Thanks for tuning into the Visible Workplace Podcast. Subscribe for more productivity tips and share with friends. We love your feedback, so please rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform. For more tips and tools, visit www.magicboards.io. Thanks again, and see you next episode. Disclaimer: the information and ideas discussed in this episode are general in nature and do not take into account your specific circumstances. You should seek specialist advice for any medical, financial, emotional, mental, or other difficulties that you are facing with appropriate specialists and professionals so that they can apply your specific circumstances and give you the required advice.